Hi everybody, this is Scott Dudley from SaaS Startup Stories, and today my special guest is Chris Hull, who's based in Chicago. Chris is the co-founder and chief product officer at Otus LLC, which is an all-in-one K-12 learning management, assessment, and data system all-in-one. So welcome to the show, Chris. Are you ready to rock and roll?
I'm definitely ready to rock and roll. Excited to be here.
Awesome, me too. All right, so let's start off with your background and what initially got you interested in starting a SaaS company right at the start.
Yeah, so I originally was a 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher. I was actually a teacher for 11 years. In 2010, back before the pandemic, back before our lives completely changed, it's hard to even imagine only a decade ago where we were at. But in 2010, I helped co-author a proposal that brought one device for every student to the social studies department. I wrote this proposal with one of my colleagues. His name's Pete Helfers. And during the rollout of one device to every kid, it became clear that the device alone was not going to improve student learning. Up until this point, I had been naive. I had thought bringing a device to every kid was going to make my job easier. It was going to make everything just work better. But actually, the rollout exposed the inefficiencies and data problems that exist in education. And I was lucky enough with Pete and then our other co-founder, Andy Bloom, to begin to build Otus to solve these inefficiency and data problems. And I actually was able to use Otus in my own classroom all the way up until 2018. It was then we were really able to take off and start selling Otus. So it was really an opportunity to solve a problem I was experiencing where, I think the best problem solvers are the ones experiencing the problem themselves. And the SaaS company just came from that need that I saw and we saw within the industry.
When was it launched? How long ago was that?
Yeah, so in 2010, we had the rollout of the devices, but Otus was launched in 2013.
Oh, okay.
So looking back, it's 8 years ago now,
Yeah.
and it's pretty amazing, the journey. When we first started out, the one-to-one devices really caused, it exposed what was happening, where I was in a meeting for education it's called a problem solving meeting, where a group of teachers get together and we are trying to identify and solve a problem for specific students. And what was happening was I was having one screen open for one of the tools and platforms we were using. 7 of my colleagues each had something different on their screens. And there was no real great way to get a comprehensive profile of how a single kid was doing.
Okay.
So our 40-minute meeting, 30 minutes was spent getting on the same page, aligning with each other. And we weren't getting to what had to happen of how do we help maximize the learning for the student. And that led us to say, we need a platform like Otus that allows you to teach, grade, analyze all the data you have, and then plan your next steps in the same system.
Awesome. Love it. All right. So did you borrow VC money to launch your SaaS company, or did you bootstrap it instead? Tell us a bit about how you got Otus off the ground.
Yeah, this is where we're a unicorn in some ways that I've talked to a lot of, founders and co-founders. Our co-founder, Andy Bloom, is a successful businessman in Chicago, and he had 3 boys, or he has 3 boys, but at the time in 2012 when we first met, he had 3 boys all in school, and he as a parent was facing these problems, and we were having these conversations of, he was getting interested in education technology, and he's like, how is this working? And there was no universal profile for a kid. Like in medicine, you might have, oh, this is all my medical history in one place. That didn't exist in education. And he's like, why is that? Yeah. And we were lucky enough that he really believed in the idea, grew fond of the idea, and he has financed Otus to this point all himself. And so we've been able to take his investment, his passion, working with the growing customer base we have. So it's not really VC money because it's like co-founder money.
Yeah.
And it's not really bootstrapped because we've bootstrapped in some areas. So it's kind of this a hybrid approach that I know I'm very fortunate to have. It's kind of a crazy story of how I even met Andy. And it's pretty remarkable to how much we've been able to grow together, work together, and be where we're at today.
And you don't have to answer to a board either. So yeah, awesome.
He is the board. So yeah,
Well, he is
he
the board.
understands what we're trying to do. So it's
Yeah.
a great working relationship for sure.
Perfect. All right. So how did you get your first 100 customers right in the beginning to really launch the customer acquisition side of it?
Yeah. So we started with, I don't even know if you'd call it an alpha, but we used a company that Andy had investment in, and we built kind of a beta or alpha version, and it was used in Pete and Mai's classroom. And so we were able to really work out some of these kinks, really able to use it. One of the key features of Otus is it has to be easy to use. We want to collect this information and we want it to be seamless. And the relationship between teachers and students is essential to being able to understand how to maximize learning. We want to be able to collect how are they learning, what are they doing. Once we had that set, we then released it free for teachers and students. And at that point, we got more feedback, more iteration. Teachers are excited by free tools. I was able to go to my colleagues, go to conferences. But really, when I look at the question here about how do we get our first 100 customers, that really takes us to 2015. We brought on Keith Westman, who's our chief operating officer. He's a former administrator, and we understood that we needed to get into the hands and into the views and into the lives of administrators in education. So how we did that was we had a pilot system. So we allowed administrators to be pilots to get going, to roll it out at the administrative level. We knew the teacher and student relationship was working well. And so in 2015, 2016 school year, we began to roll it out to pilots. And that's how we got our first 100 customers, through this approach of, hey, try this, see value in it. Now we can charge for it. So in 2015, we really understood that's what we wanted to do. We brought on Keith. We also soon after brought on our chief learning officer, who's a former superintendent in Illinois. And we were able to really understand the pain points administrators feel. In other industries, a direct report, if you're an administrator, you might have 10, 15, 20 people. In education, you sometimes have 100 people reporting to you, 150 people reporting to you.
Yeah.
It has a lack of transparency to be able to see how things are going. How are things going in the classroom? How are things going for the student? And we want Otus to be a transparency platform for those administrators so they can see what's happening. So after those first pilots, we were able to further refine our tool. We began to be able to charge and really be able to continue to grow from there, with the understanding that our SaaS company was providing a service that was a technology, but we also supplement that with service as another component to that. Okay. And with our chief learning officer, I often tell this to educators. I'm a former educator. I left the classroom, as I said, in 2018.
Yep.
Teachers can be the worst students for professional development. So we understood from the beginning, in order for our platform to really take off, we needed to support the educators no matter where they were in the cycle of this situation. Couldn't just be a one-off onboarding. So we also have this really amazing client service or client success team. We provide chat support for all our adult users. We also work with our districts to give multi approaches to how we do professional development. We do it in the beginning, we do it in the middle, we do it throughout the experience.
Okay, excellent. All right, so tell me a bit about the Otus product and what exactly it provides to its users. So obviously it's a content learning sort of platform, but can you go into a little bit more detail about that?
Yeah, so we really look at ourselves as having 4 pillars to what we do. So the first pillar is the ability to have the tools to help teaching. So for teaching, it's the ability to facilitate learning. So this is like a traditional learning management system. I have a series of activities. I want to distribute to students. I want them to complete those activities. And I want to just be able to have the kids know what to learn, know what to read, know what to do in the learning process. We've also supplemented our learning management system with some communication tools, with the ability to email, the ability to text, the ability to see all that information, because communication is really important to that teaching aspect. The second pillar is the ability to grade. Now, grading can be, overwhelming for teachers. It was definitely a big pain point of my own. But the idea is you're trying to measure where a student is. You're trying to measure learning. And when you really look at grading as a measurement of learning, you want to be able to do it as frequently as possible. You want to be able to say, how is a kid progressing on this skill as often as you can? But that makes it absolutely necessary for grading to be efficient and effective. I can't be wasting my time. I had 150 students. If I had to grade 5 minutes for each kid, that's hours of my time. I want to make sure there's a payoff there. So we really try to make grading as robust and dynamic as possible. We have people who use our system in PE or chorus, as well as math, English language arts, social studies, science. So we have a wide range of things you can do. You can have students upload work like videos, or you can take a more traditional multiple choice test. So with that really robust grading platform, we're able to collect the information to know how a student is learning and where they're at. This transitions us into the third phase, which is the ability to analyze. And so you've collected all this information. I mentioned earlier in the conversation how we had this problem solving meeting and there were 7 screens open. We've also been able to pull in data from assessments that might not be given in the classroom, but might be the ACT, the SAT, or maybe statewide or national assessments. We pull that into the student profile as well. So when you're analyzing information in a profile for an individual student, you'll be able to see their attendance, their behavior, their learning activities, what they have done, what they haven't done. You'll be able to see their grades and performance, but then you'll also be able to see these benchmark assessments, and you'll be able to analyze all that. For the administrator, we also allow you to aggregate that information to be able to see trends. How are my different genders, different ethnicities, different grade levels, different buildings, how are they doing? What are their trends? So all of this gives us a really powerful platform. And the final pillar is the ability to plan what to do next and to progress monitor how to achieve the goals you have for each kid. Those could be small goals like I want every 3rd grader to be able to read. Those could be larger goals where I want every freshman in high school to have a career pathway by the time they finish. And we really want to be able to have the system where you can do all that in one place so that you can have this comprehensive profile.
Excellent. All right. So when I was reading through about Otus, I mean, obviously a learning management system, self-explanatory, but what is a K-12 learning management system? I've got absolutely no idea what that is.
Yeah, so this is one of the big differentiators for us, and it's definitely, unfortunately, if you're in education, you might get it, but for the outsider, it's like, yeah, what's K-12? So
Yeah.
K-12 is kindergarten through 12th grade.
Oh,
And the idea is,
sorry. Yeah.
No, it's a great question because it's really one of the big differentiators for us. So most learning management systems started at the college or the higher education level, where you're there. You might be in college, you might be in a university, you might be, doing things in a grad program, and you need to be able to facilitate this learning, online. This might be like discussion boards, your message boards. You also have teachers like Philosophy 101 or Education 101. They're doing the same course every single semester or grading period. K-12 is a different animal, and that is because you're in the classroom with the kids, not in college, which might be 1 or 2 days a week or 3 days a week. You're in the classroom typically every day. Also, there are more things that can just cause slight disruptions. Like when I was teaching, I would teach the Constitution for the U.S. Constitution. I know you're in Australia. We actually did a unit on all constitutions. So we did some comparative analysis there. But the idea is I would like to start that on usually week 6 or 7 of my unit. Well, if holidays fell a certain way, or if we got into a really good discussion about something, I wanted to have flexibility. I wanted to be able to say, oh, how is this going? And there's often times where one of the years I was teaching, we had a situation to where there was a local issue going on around our teacher union in our school. And there was this conversation taking place. And it was really fascinating because I could, because of the flexibility that I had with Otus, I could delay the start of something to be able to problem solve something else.
Okay.
K-12 can be, it's like, oh, okay, I'm working with you, Scott, you're my student. All of a sudden I realize, oh, you should have known something, but you missed it. I got to catch you up. Well, instead of being on this very programmatic, this is our pacing, I'm able to do the pacing. I'm able to differentiate within that. And I can say, okay, Scott and you 4 other students, hey, I'm going to supplement you with this activity instead of having this more structured approach that's been predetermined.
Okay, so are your customers global, like right around the world, or is it mostly US based?
We're mainly US based, but we do have customers across the globe. We actually are starting to work with some schools in China, but we also have schools in throughout the world. We have some in South America, Africa. I'll have to check on Australia. I should have done that before the call, but we have scatterings throughout the globe, which is really exciting to see what we've built really pay off everywhere.
That's excellent. All right, so roughly how many employees do you have at the moment, and how they what departments do they split up into?
Yeah, so we have about 75 employees currently, and we really like to split up our company. We like everything to be very interconnected. We think it's really important for that. But when we look at a high level, there is some organization. And so on the delivery team, we have a couple teams built. So our delivery team is the one building the product, being able to get out what we've built. And so we have three product teams, and these are teams that are consistent of developers, UX. We also have QA, and then we have a PM on each one. And so our developers actually have disciplines such as data, infrastructure, front end, back end. And with that, we've really created these really robust product teams. So our 3 product teams are around what we deliver, which is our assessment team, our LMS team, and then we have a user management team. Otus is used for students, families, teachers, and administrators. So we have 4 distinct user groups. So this product user management team is really important. We then have a matrix organization. So those product teams, as I mentioned, have they belong to a platform team, which are QA, UX, front end, back end. I'm going to forget one, infrastructure, data, and it allows us to have some really great conversations, collaborative approaches, and enabled us to prioritize not only product features, but necessary technological components we need to do as well. The other side of the house is kind of our sales, client success, and operations. So we have a sales team, which has regional sales managers, business development reps who really are getting the leads with our marketing team. Our marketing team is really trying to get our brand awareness out there. We have social media. We also just have a marketing director. And then we have operations, which is our smallest team, which is accounting and information like that. And then our other team, not all of them are important, but we also have our client success team. And as I mentioned, we have some who give chat support. We really have a big push in our organization to have educators. Nearly 40% of our company are former educators. This is especially, we have a large population of those in our customer success team. So we have an implementation group that helps implement it. We have account managers who carry it on. And then we have these client solution specialists who are doing the day-to-day chatting and the day-to-day interactions to ensure the success of all our clients.
Okay, so it's quite large. So, all right, just wondering, what would a ballpark average lifetime value for a customer be? Would you have any idea on that?
Yeah, so this is something we're actually working on right now with our operations group. So as I was mentioning, 2018 is when we started to gain clients. So we're about 2-3 years into that phase, and we're trying to pinpoint this value. I don't have a number offhand, but we understand the key as a data company. We understand the key to have this type of data, but because it's kind of fluctuating school years, we work on a school year, academic year, which is July to July, and this is causing us to really look into it. And the pandemic with COVID threw off some of our finances, so we're still trying to pinpoint this. And unfortunately, I like to be transparent. That's one of the pillars of or
Yeah.
driving philosophies I have. I don't have a number, but I do appreciate the question because it's something we're striving to get the answer to.
Yeah, sometimes it is difficult to come to an accurate figure on that as well. So I completely understand. So, all right then. So, right now, what would you say are your most successful customer acquisition channels, and how did you find them? What's driving the most business for you?
Yeah, so I'd say my favorite channel, I don't know if it's the best, but my favorite is the referral channel, which is our ability to land in an area and expand to the neighbors. And we've had really nice success with this, where kind of like our pilot process to start, we were able to get into some schools to try us out, and they see such success that they want to spread the word. So we have a really nice referral program for all our current clients.
Excellent.
On top of that, we also have seen some really nice work through social media. Also, our BDR group, which is our business development group, is really great at actively curating leads for us. And they do that through conferences. They do that through email outreach. And so those are probably the main drivers: the referral program. We have the social media, Facebook, Twitter. Educators really live predominantly on those two right now. We've experimented with TikTok, even though that's beyond me.
Okay.
I'm not even quite sure how it works. My kids like it. My wife likes it. I find some of it funny, but I know some people can drive it. We've also seen a little bit of LinkedIn, where I know you and I connected. But then our BDRs use conferences, and then we really like to create user stories or customer success white papers to really show what we're doing.
Okay. And then on the flip side, how do you approach reducing churn and retaining your paying customers?
Churn, the 5-letter word that I almost sometimes think is a 4-letter word.
Yeah.
Churn has been something where we really take a proactive approach to understand each and every time we've lost a customer. We have a group, we call it our churn team. We use Slack. We have a channel where when it happens, which we try to make as infrequent as possible, we have myself, we have our chief operating officer, Keith, we have our head of sales, our chief sales officer, Jennifer, our chief learning officer, Phil. We all come together and we're really trying to analyze and understand what was the cause. Some causes, we had a school who had to leave us because of financial reasons due to COVID. They had huge cutbacks into the school. They had to pay their teachers. They had to pay additional bus drivers. And there was just an unfortunate situation where we had to look at that, like, is that something we could have done differently? A couple of years ago, we had one of our clients we lost because we were missing a key feature. And it was one of those things we didn't realize that we needed this really robust sharing of assessments. We had a way of doing it, but we didn't realize the workflow. And it was one of those things that by the time we had developed a feature, which was really quick, we were really an agile shop. It was too late for this one customer. And it was one of those things where, how can we get ahead of that? And we've put a lot of things in place we do a much better job in our onboarding interviews, understanding, are there any key features we might not have? Luckily, we've had much fewer of those now that we're a fully mature, product. But we really try to get ahead of that. We also really try to understand some potential pitfalls in terms of, hey, if they're coming from this competitor to us, this is the workflow. This is like our nomenclature, our way of calling it. Because sometimes even just if we call it an assessment, somebody else calls it a test. What's the same thing? There's just little things like that where by having these ongoing conversations, I think it's something that you have to learn. Like, I think it's impossible to be perfect. No one's going to be perfect. You're going to have, one of the key mentions of like chat support. We at first were maybe a little over reliant on chat support. Hey, we're providing all this, this support. Well, that's a little bit more reactive. They're coming to us. And we're like, okay, how do we get ahead of it? Using metrics. We have multiple types of assessments on Otus because we are so dynamic and robust. Well, if they're only using 2 of our 5 types, okay, we can see that in our data. let's have an additional training to get them onto all 5 types. Or, hey, we see they've collected all this data. Let's have a training so they can know how to analyze and act on that data. And so it's really been a really cool experience because it's iterating on what we've known, but never being satisfied, because there's always new things for churn. If you would have told me, 15 months ago that there was going to be this huge, COVID situation where all of a sudden all finances were going to be turned over, I'd be like, I don't know if I believe that. The same thing happened to our product, where our product needed to transform because all of this learning is now being facilitated either online, remotely, online, remote, or hybrid, where you're in person and remote. And we're now just finally going back to being in person here in the United States. So by having your pulse on what's happening, you can be much more proactive in ensuring you have success.
That's interesting, though. Would you say that, like, the whole COVID pandemic has been a good thing for, as far as creating more business, or has it sort of had the opposite effect? If you can try to put a positive spin on it, on a bad thing.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to say the pandemic has been good. I think that would make me seem as, there's been so much, pain and frustration.
It's difficult way to word it.
I understand your question here, because one of the key drivers for us was, and this is back in 2010 when my school district went 1-to-1 for the social studies department. That really, once you go online, your information just multiplies exponentially. You just have so much more information. You're generating so much more. In the past, kids would be in a notebook. They'd be in one thing. Well, now they might be in Google Drive or Microsoft Teams. They might be on 12 different websites. All of a sudden, your information is overloaded. So a key driver is 1-to-1, one device to every kid.
Okay.
And at least in the United States, COVID, the pandemic, has caused more schools to push to provide a device for every kid.
I see.
So in that way, there is a greater opportunity for us, because you need an online learning management system.
Yes.
You need a system to deliver assessments online. You want to not grade by hand anymore. Now you can grade online and make it more effective and efficient. You want a way to take all that information and put it into one place. Well, that is the purpose of technology. Technology is a tool that needs to be used when you have a purpose. You just don't want to go to Home Depot or go to I can't come up on the Home Depot. You don't want to go to a store just to buy a really cool saw or a really cool, hammer. I don't even know, the sledgehammer. You just don't want to go do that. Like, you need to have a reason for doing your job, your goal. And with that, that's where Otus can come into play. We have this need and this desire to be more online and facilitating. And so for sure, there's been a big opportunity now, because the need is more widespread. More schools have devices. More schools are doing things online. Therefore, they need a platform like Otus.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes sense. All right. So what are the most common mistakes, in your opinion, that inexperienced SaaS founders make?
I think for me, from talking to people, is you try to do too much too quickly. Oftentimes you experience a problem and it's a huge problem, and you try to do every bit of that problem okay. And what took us some time to gain our footing was understanding that we knew what the goal was. We wanted all 4 of our pillars to be the gold standard in the industry. That takes time, and sometimes you can be distracted or diverted from that main purpose. So understanding what is the main problem, understanding what the solution is, having that vision, and then being tireless and working there. Now, that doesn't mean like a waterfall approach. You need to be able to iterate and modify, but understanding what does and what does not fall into that core aspect of what you're trying to achieve is something that I think often happens, where you're like, oh, wait, I stumbled across something here. And it's like, oh, should I pivot? And pivoting is okay. I just think it's not something you want to do often. You want to be very direct and thoughtful in what you're doing.
Yeah. So maybe what about a personal experience? What would you say is the biggest challenge that you had to face when you first started Otus, and how did you go about overcoming it? Is there something that comes to mind?
So one of the things that happened is we really did a great job with that teacher student experience. But when we expanded to the administrator experience, I let one of my driving philosophies overshadow what was the market need. I let my own bias and point of view change what we should have done. So I believe in my life. So I have three philosophies that drive my life forward. Be respectful, be honest, and then try your best. Well, it's like, oh, how do those guide you in the wrong way? Well, the be honest part, I really believe in transparency. And I really think it's really important to have a transparent understanding of information. So when we first built our administrative portal, we were very transparent with everything taking place. So an admin could see everything. They could see the drafts, the assessments, they could see everything. Well, when we then extended that to families, I'm like, yeah, let's be transparent. Let's have all this information out there. Let's get everybody on the same page. And what I realized after the fact was, by giving people access to the information at the same moment, you're not allowing teachers or administrators the ability to analyze and understand the information. If I have 150 students as a teacher, or if I'm an administrator and I have 25,000 students, if the moment I get the information, the family has the information, families are looking at their kid. They're looking at one individual and they're like, why did Chris struggle on this test? Well, it's like, if the teacher and the admin don't have the ability to look at that information and have an answer, it can create some tension that was unintended. So what we've kind of done is instead, so our default was complete transparency. What we've built in are some toggles and levers that allow you to hide or delay when things are posted. And that's still something we're coming to. Some information is readily available immediately, but other information, we have a little bit more saying like, oh, this information, I don't want everyone to see at first. I want just this core group to see, and then we'll expand from there. But that was really something that my predisposition for being honest and transparent made me look at information that I should have seen differently, because I put my beliefs into it instead of saying what is going to be the best for our customers.
Okay, interesting. All right, so here's a good one. What are you curious about or researching right now regarding SaaS or learning management systems, sort of either way?
Yeah, so reading is something that reading research as a former social studies teacher, I'm just truly obsessed about. So one of the books I've read recently that really we read as our client success team read and the product team read as well is called Customer Success: How Innovative Companies Are Reducing Churn and Growing Recurring Revenue by Nick Mehta, I think is how you pronounce his name. But it gets to that churn question. And it's really about creating, how do you reduce churn, but also create better loyalty or those huge fans in your product. We want to be able to grow that because we've had really good success with our referral program. We want to continue that. We have some really cool ideas about, as a smaller company, I used to have direct access to everybody. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go right to this customer. Well, now as we scale, how do we do that? How do we create internal focus groups, external focus groups? How do we ensure that as an entire company, we understand that customer success can't be just something our client success team does. It has to be something we all do. How do we have our sales get into it? And they've already done a great job. They're jumping in. Everybody's just been really collaborative about it. How do we have our developers, our delivery team also understand customer success? This has really been good. Another book we're also researching, which kind of pivots to the delivery team, is a book called Shape Up by Basecamp. And it really has gotten us into understanding how to prioritize. So originally we were prioritizing very much to the customer needs. Okay, we need this feature we're rolling out. Well, we've now achieved a really nice product base. We have this product features that I'm super proud of. Now, as we pivot to longer term things, how do we ensure we're scaling so that if we hit our sales goal, if we grow more than expected, 10x, 15x, are we going to be able to be stable? And are we going to be able to have all of the things we need technology wise? So we really have been looking at some of our prioritization processes, some of our techniques, We have 2-week sprints, but we've moved to 8-week prioritization cycles so that we can still be agile, but we can also allow for these projects the developers can dig in, deliver, and then move on. So we're not always jumping from, we had, again, as mentioned before, the pandemic, we had to pivot on a dime, right? All of a sudden, the entire education world changed. We couldn't always say, well, we got to wait. We've been pushing hard for 9 months or a year to achieve some of these different things happening.
Yes.
Now we've found our cadence again, and Basecamp was a great book around how to structure a project proposal, get it into a process, and ensure the key stakeholders from our sales team, our client success team, but also our leads of our teams, from the product leads to our platform leads. How do we ensure we have the best data solutions, back-end solutions, infrastructure solutions? And that's a great book as well.
Who was the author of that book again? Sorry.
Basecamp. I'm gonna have to Google real quick. Basecamp Shape Up is by, let's see, how quick can I type? That's really the key here. I wish I had it on it's by Ryan Singer.
Oh, okay. Never heard of him. Okay, I have to check that out. Sounds good.
It's definitely well worth the read. We've had almost our entire delivery team has read it, and it's really been helpful for us to add the language to some problems some pain points we were facing, and it's helped us really move faster and even more efficiently ourselves.
Excellent. All right, so just to wrap up, where can people go to find out more about Otus?
You can go to otus.com. That's otus.com. And it really is our website. You'll be able to learn what our product is able to do. You'll be able to see what problems we can provide solutions for with Otus. And you can also learn about the success stories we have.
Excellent. All right, then. Thanks for being on the show, Chris. I really appreciate your time. That was great.
Thank you very much, Scott.